I bought it in a store on Bloor.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Bloor and Bathurst, when there was still a Honest Ed's there.
Oh, right. Yeah. I loved
Yeah,
Honest Ed's.
I know, I know. I haven't been in that area in quite a while, so I'm not sure if I know they were building some sort of apartment building or something, some condominiums. So not sure if it's built already.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Ask CDI. My name is Lisa Sarah Liddell, and I'm one of the managers here at Family Violence Services.
And I'm Paula DeJesus. It's nice to be here with you. I'm also a manager with Family Violence Services.
We're really glad to be here to talk to you about supporting healing for children and mothers after family violence, and to really talk a little bit about some of our learnings from our work with families.
Yes, and so we wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. At CDI, Child Development Institute, we acknowledge that the land on which we work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the New Credit. Our community is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and we recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land. To be Canadian is to be treaty people. The founders of the entity we know as Canada negotiated treaties with Indigenous populations that were meant to enable peace and coexistence, or so we promised. After many decades of systemic oppression, our society has begun down the road towards healing and reconciliation. We humbly acknowledge that we have a long way to go. We end this land acknowledgement with a question. What actions are we prepared to take in our work and personal lives towards healing and reconciliation with the Indigenous communities whose lands we have the privilege to work on and to live on? We'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge that yesterday, being November the 25th, marked the launch of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This is a worldwide initiative launched yearly by the United Nations in recognition of the continued prevalence of domestic violence against women and children around the world. Canada recognizes the month of November as the National Family Violence Prevention Month. And during the 16 days of activism, awareness and attention is brought to the issue of gender-based violence. It's brought to communities around the country. Today's conversation is a small way in which CDI participates in this endeavor. With this in mind, we take a reflective moment to honor the lives of women and children impacted by domestic violence, and we dedicate this session of Ask CDI to their courage and resilience. We commit to continue to support families who have experienced abuse in their homes so they may live with safety, so they may heal and thrive in their family well-being.
Before we begin the rest of our presentation, we'd like to remind the audience that CDI is in compliance with privacy legislation, including the protection of children and youth in our programs and services. As this is a public online forum, we request that you maintain the privacy of children and youth involved by not sharing personal information about them through your social media channels. We recognize that today is a difficult topic. One of the reasons is that as a society, we don't actually really like to talk about family violence. It's often ignored, it's kept behind closed doors. It's a bit hard to accept that in a place where you should feel the safest, the most cared for and loved, that sometimes abuse is going on. What this means is that women are going to work, taking their kids to the park, and not talking about the hurtful things that are happening at home. Children are going to school and no one knows. This kind of silence has an impact. It's often the way women and children manage abusive situations in their home. They just don't talk about it. but this silence can suppress their thoughts and feelings. It can impact their behavior and their relationships. Our goal is to break the silence, to support families in connecting with each other and talking about the thoughts and the feelings related to the experiences that they have had, because we know that that's where the healing begins.
Yes.
Yeah.
So during this presentation, we'd like you to take care of yourself and to again understand that this is can be a difficult topic. And what we'd like to do is start with a grounding activity. This is something that we do with our families every session that we work with them, and it's an opportunity to basically calm the nervous system and prepare us to begin working together and to discuss materials that sometimes can be difficult to discuss. So we'd like to share an activity with you in preparation of our time together. So if it feels more comfortable right now, just to listen, take a little stretch, do whatever you need to do, please do. Those of you who are interested in doing this grounding activity, I invite you now, if it feels comfortable, to close your eyes and take a moment to check in with your breath. Notice that as you inhale, there may be a sense of coolness of the breath entering your body. As you exhale through your mouth, notice the breath leaving your body. Hopefully, you're exhaling the worries and thoughts of the day. With each breath, focusing on being present to whatever may enter into your thoughts, just gently notice entering, inhaling, and exhaling without any judgment. As you continue to take a few more breaths and come into stillness, take a moment to check in with your body. See what wants to relax and what wants to let go, maybe just a little. A few more cleansing breaths in and out, in and out. And as we prepare to be together today, we invite you to consider that your breath is always available to you, supporting you throughout the day, offering you a moment of self-care, offering you the opportunity to focus on the here and now and to stay present with yourself in ways that bring safety and meaning to you. If your eyes are closed, we invite you to gently open them. Maybe check in with your body a little through some movement that helps you feel centered and grounded, and join us in our presentation. So there we are. That is a grounding activity. So we'd like to start off by sharing our agenda with you today. We've got 3 parts to it. The first part is a brief overview of our services. The second part is a discussion around 3 key themes that moms bring to our services. And the third part is questions that you might have. And we invite you to send questions throughout the entire presentation, and we'll dedicate some time at the end to those questions. So feel free to send us your questions anytime during the presentation. So let's just discuss our services for a few minutes. We won't spend too much time on this, and we actually invite you to our website for more in-depth information on our family violence services at www.childdevelop.ca. In a nutshell, we provide family violence services in a number of different ways. One is through group counseling. And in group counseling services, there are a number of components. We have family interactive opportunities, so group where mom and child are together. Then we have age appropriate groups for children, and we have moms groups. We also offer family counseling services to a family or families and parenting support. Our programs are about supporting moms and children who've had lived experiences of abuse and who have transitioned out of abuse. So they may be in that very transitory time in their lives, in that they're either living in shelter, or the abusive individual has just recently left, or they're living somewhere else now. And so we have services available in shelter to support families that are living in shelter. And we also offer services at the agency. So the focus is on a number of things. It's on supporting moms and children in their relationship together, focused on processing their thoughts and feelings about their experiences. Because one of the things we know about family violence is it's typically not discussed. It's something that's difficult for us as a society to want to face, especially when, as Lisa spoke to earlier, abuse happening in the most intimate of relationships is just such a hard thing. So we dedicate a lot of time to processing those thoughts and feelings. Um, we also work on the challenging feelings, or what we discuss with kids, the big, strong, challenging feelings, and support emotional regulation, support moms and children in many different ways of regulating those feelings. And then we work with moms around the unique aspects of parenting after abuse.
Great, thanks, Paula. We know that domestic violence continues to be an issue in society around the world. In Canada, we know that on any given night, almost 3,500 women and their children sleep in shelters because it isn't safe at home, and an additional 300 women are not able to make it into shelter because the shelters are already full. The pandemic has increased risk for families. Social isolation, loss of employment, and reduced income are all known factors that increase domestic violence. And over the last 9 months with COVID-19, we know that this has been heightened. In addition, the pandemic has led to increased stress and tension in families, with lockdowns, families confined to their home, with the closure of school and daycare earlier in the year. All of this increases risk. And the challenge is the isolation brings with it another problem. It is hard to connect with others, your normal supports. It's also hard to connect with professionals. We know that right now there are families who are managing experiences of domestic violence. We want families to know that you're not alone and that there is help. There are lots of different services that are out there to help families in healing from experiences of domestic violence. Assaulted Women's Helpline, Kids Help Phone for children, Mental Health TO, and Child Development Institute are all services that are there to help families whenever you're ready. So remember that you're not alone and there is help.
Yes, and we'll be posting those numbers again, and through our Facebook site as well. Um, so let's get to those themes then. So what are these three main areas, main topics that moms bring to our services? And we can broadly categorize them in these three questions. Number one, how can exposure to family violence impact my children and teens? Number two, are there things I can do as a mom to help my children heal? And the third question is, how can I take care of myself while I'm taking care of my children? So today we'd like to explore these questions, building on what families have taught us and taught each other. We're going to begin each answer by reading a quote, and this quote essentially highlights key insights moms in our services have made on each of these questions. Now, these quotes are not quotes from real moms that have attended our program. They're very much a composite, a sort of blend of insights that moms have made through their work in our programs. You know, it's been our experience that insights are made when there's safety, when there's an opportunity to be heard non-judgmentally and an ability to curiously explore what a mother already knows will be helpful to her children.
Great, thanks, Paula. So that first question, how can exposure to domestic violence impact kids and teens? This is a quote from Christina. I used to think that really only my son was affected by what happened at home. He would act out at school and at home, hitting other kids and hitting me. I knew something was wrong. It wasn't until much later that I realized that my daughter was also affected. She was quiet, she had good grades, and didn't really cause any major problems. But she always seemed to be sick, mostly stomach aches, and she didn't really have a lot of friends and kind of kept to herself. Both of my kids were affected by the violence. One was just more obvious than the other.
Yes. And Christina, again, not a real name and not a real quote from a client. She's really highlighting an important point here, and that is that children can be impacted and affected differently by the violence they're exposed to, even when they're in the same home. And there are a lot of different factors that can influence that. Um, Age, and the developmental stage that the child was at when the violence began occurring is one. For example, there could be a 12-year-old who tantrums and this is confusing to mom. My child is 12 years old, but maybe the abuse started when the child was 2 or 3. And they're a bit stuck in expressing their strong emotions, their big feelings in that way. They're stuck until they learn other ways to express those feelings. Added to that is also just the normal developmental stages that children go through. So, for example, that the same example, a 12-year-old may be already experimenting and exercising their independence, and they're doing it in a way that they've seen work at home. They've seen, for example, that if they get really angry and really upset, it shuts other people down and somebody gets their way. So they're starting to use the same type of tactics. But it's coming out of this developmental desire just to be independent or to express themselves. So again, there's an opportunity there, which is to help that child reach that developmental stage using different ways of expressing themselves. Temperament of a child, for example. Some children, all of us are born with a particular personality or temperament. Some of us are more easygoing. Others can be very sensitive. Some can be very strong and feisty personalities. And that all impacts how, the abuse that happens at home is going to affect that child. Relationships with other family members and supportive people. Those are protective factors in terms of how a child is affected by the abuse. The occurrence of other stressors in a child's life, of course, will affect. For example, if there's bullying at school, neighborhood violence, experiencing racism or other forms of oppression, poverty, all of those things can complicate.
Great. Thanks, Paula. So we thought about trying to break down the impact so we can look at it a little bit more. And there are four sort of categories that Paula and I are going to talk about. Kids that are impacted and show you by acting out, kids that keep things inside, kids that are reliving bits of the violence that has happened, and kids that experience physical complaints. So, for children and teens who are acting out, they're letting you know with their behavior that they are having a hard time. Just like in the quote, Christina's son, she knew something was wrong because he was hitting her, he was hitting other kids. So, kids who act out, it's easier to see that they're having a hard time. They may be hurting others, they may be hurting themselves. You may see a child that's bullying. Sometimes you see older children and teens defying authority or not following family rules or school rules. These are kids that are very commonly labeled as defiant or oppositional. Um, Sometimes kids who are acting out may run away. They may misuse substances just to cope with the feelings that are going inside. When kids are acting out, um, because they make uh, things challenging, their behavior is hard, they're actually more likely to get help. Just like Christina said, I knew something was wrong with my son, but I actually took me quite a while to figure out that something was wrong or my daughter was having a hard time. So kids who act out often actually get the support a little bit earlier.
Right, Lisa. And so it's those kids that keep things inside, we can't forget them. We need to understand that they may have been impacted as well, and quite significantly, just as significantly, excuse me, as kids who sometimes we call it externalize their thoughts and feelings, whereas someone like Christina's daughter is internalizing, it stays inside. And those kids can often be overlooked. And what does internalizing look like? So they're the kids that are quiet, that are withdrawn. Often they have difficulty concentrating because there could be things in terms of worries, anxieties that they have. So again, these are the kids that sometimes we can miss.
Absolutely. Another way kids are impacted is sometimes children are actually reliving experiences of violence. And this can come in a few different forms. Sometimes children have nightmares. They have trouble sleeping and they have quite vivid nightmares. Other kids have flashbacks, and those are really vivid memories that come to their mind. Some kids actually call those daymares. So as opposed to nightmares, they're having daymares. And if you can think about that and what that must be like in school for kids who have these vivid memories coming back to them while they're trying to learn. Sometimes teachers see a child who's experiencing this and see them as, oh, they're spacing out. They're not really paying attention or listening. But what's really happening is they're actually having this flashback of a really hard memory. Sometimes kids are also on red alert. So their nervous system is heightened. And everywhere they look, it feels like there is danger. And so they may startle easily or get upset quite quickly. So that's something else that can happen.
And then there are the children who have physical manifestations of this stress and this trauma that they've experienced. So this can come out through physical complaints, stomach aches, headaches, other types of body pains. Oh, my shoulders are achy, my jaw hurts, and that can be from clenching and holding on to things, leg pain, difficulty with eating, or perhaps overeating as a way to self soothe, lots of sleeping, or the opposite, struggling to sleep. There can also be physical regression. So, for example, a child who's totally toilet trained now has regressed a bit and is not toilet trained. There could be regressive type of talk and regressive play. So those are all the many different ways that um, experiences of abuse can impact children and teens.
Yeah, and we thought so it's helpful to know those different ways that kids can be impacted. And it's also helpful to learn and understand about this concept called the window of tolerance. Um, Everyone has a window of tolerance, and a window of tolerance is that zone that we can get in that is really a great spot to be. It's a place where we can kind of manage our day to day lives. We may have ups and downs in our day, but they are manageable, and you feel reasonably calm and cool and collected while you're in that zone. You can think of it as the sweet spot. It's where we can think and we can learn. It's where we can make decisions, we can empathize with others, And we can use words to describe our feelings because we're in our window of tolerance.
Hmm. And I've just posted a little visual that speaks to the window of tolerance. And for now, I'm going to stop sharing it, but we'll post this on our website or on Facebook site for everyone to see.
Great. Thanks, Paula. It is a really helpful explanation. So, when you've had stressful life events, and everybody has stressful life events, they can trigger a stress response. And so we try and stay within our window of tolerance, but sometimes the stress is so big or it impacts us in a way that it pushes us outside of our window. And we can kind of go in two ways. We can become what's called hyper aroused, which is when the body wants to fight or it wants to run away. So in a child, you might see that your child has a really tense body. You might see anger or anxiety. You may see a child that feels out of control. The stress has pushed them outside of their window of tolerance and they are in kind of fight or flight. Another way that you can go from the window of tolerance is that you can kind of go lower. So your body wants to shut down. Kids who kind of go in that direction are seen as they go into kind of a spacey, maybe more numb, lower sort of mood. They may seem zoned out. The thing about these two ways that you can be triggered into going is that when this happens, it's actually not something that kids choose. It is a reaction. It is the fight, flight, or freeze that just takes over. And for kids who've had experiences of violence and trauma, the challenge is often those experiences shrink that window of tolerance. So it's actually smaller. So the day to day ups and downs of life can push them out of the window of tolerance a lot quicker. So they may be jumping to being feeling out of control or very angry, or jumping to the low mood very quickly because their window of tolerance is so small because of their experiences. How these things are really helpful when we're parents and we have children who have experienced really hurtful things is it can make parenting a little bit easier. If we understand the different ways that kids can be impacted and we have a sense of the window of tolerance, we can actually make a decision to parent a bit differently. So, for example, with Christina and her son who was hitting, if Christina was to look at that behavior and feel that her son was hitting because he was being defiant and being angry, she would likely parent in a very specific way. She may feel that she needs to discipline him. It might need to be kind of punitive in some way because she doesn't want that behavior to continue. But if Christina had an understanding of the impact of violence and this idea of the window of tolerance, and that actually the hitting behavior is coming from this idea that he's been pushed out of his window of tolerance, and it didn't take very much maybe because his window of tolerance is quite small due to his experiences. He is seeing everything and everyone as a threat, and he's not actually choosing to hit. It is this reaction that is taking over. If we looked at the hitting behavior as a parent in that way, we would do very different things. We would try and create safety for this child. We would try and connect with them and respond as sensitively as we could because we would be trying to get that child back into their window of tolerance.
Yeah. And this is where we often, Lisa, we often talk about, taking a curious stance as to
Mhm.
what's happening. Like take a step back as a mom and say, where is this behavior possibly coming from? Could this have something to do with past experiences and a way of managing a situation that right now is feeling very unsafe? If so, how can I lean in and support my child in this moment in a way that's going to help them calm and also find a different way of managing whatever's going on right now?
Yeah.
So Our third question is our second question. This is our second question, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Are there things I can do as a mom to help my children heal? So the answer is yes, yes, yes. And it's the little things that count. The little things. Here's a quote from Farah, an insight into this question. Stay with your child when they are having a hard time handling their feelings. I used to put my child on time outs every time he had a tantrum. What I realized was that his tantrums were really just about him having a hard time coping with his feelings. Now I stay with my child when he's upset. Sometimes he lets me put my hand on his back. Other times I can say calming words, and sometimes I just stay quiet while I'm with him until he feels better.
Thanks, Paula. Absolutely. That is just such a really helpful thing to think about when we're parenting our children and they're feeling overwhelmed. And feelings are really such an important area to explore with your child. Helping your child learn how to express and manage feelings can really actually help expand that window of tolerance that we just talked about. And there are lots of different things that you can do to help your child. You can talk about feelings in your home. You can help kids identify and label their feelings. You can validate feelings for kids and help them find lots of different ways to express them. And as Paula mentioned earlier, we can also try and lean in to those more challenging feelings. So when you think of feelings and helping your child manage feelings in your home in kind of day-to-day life, things to think about is just talking about feelings when you're at home, when your child is calm and connected, having conversations about feelings and what they felt like in the morning and how they're feeling now. Storybooks and kids' TV shows are great for conversations around feelings because you can ask questions about how do you think that character feels? Oh, I wonder how that character feels. And you're just bringing in all these ideas and thoughts around what people feel. It can also be helpful to identify your own feelings around your child. And sometimes that can be hard, especially feelings of sadness or frustration. But when children hear their caregivers talk about their feelings, it helps them know that feelings are okay, that all feelings are okay. Because if mom did it and said that she was really angry, well, maybe I too can say, hey, I'm feeling really angry. And then in those real challenging moments, we want to help them identify their feelings. Simple sentences, especially when kids are young, like it seems like you might be feeling angry right now. All of these things help kids know that all feelings are okay and that they can be managed. We also want to take some time to validate feelings for kids. And as a society, I was thinking about it, we often invalidate kids' feelings. We say
Hmm,
things like, oh, don't be sad. Oh, there's
right.
nothing to be nervous about. Oh, that
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. We do that a lot as a society. Kids' feelings are kind of invalidated. And so some of the work at home is helping kids know that their feelings make sense, even if you wouldn't feel the same way, letting them know that it makes sense that you feel sad because you can't see your friend today. Little comments like that help kids know that you get it. And they will be more likely to come to you with those harder feelings because when they said something to you, you understood them and they felt good. The other thing to think about is finding creative ways to express feelings all the time. Using art, using movement, activity, writing, journaling, all of those different ways. So kids grow up learning, hey, there are lots of different ways for me to express these feelings that I have inside. And then, as Paula mentioned, leaning into those hard feelings when kids have. And leaning in just means being there, being responsive, being willing to hear it. And sometimes that can be hard if kids have really strong feelings. If moms have had experiences of violence, sometimes those strong feelings can actually push her out of her window of tolerance, especially if those strong feelings may remind her of situations where she was in abuse. If there's yelling or screaming, those things can be really difficult. And it can be helpful for moms to connect with someone to talk about those feelings because they're really common and to find different ways to be able to remain calm when their child is having a hard time. Responding sensitively to your child when they're having these strong feelings really teaches them that you are a safe person to be with and that you actually can hold these feelings. And Paula actually introduced me to this quote that I feel like sort of sums up everything around our talk about feelings. It's a quote by Janine Roth, and the quote is, "All any feeling wants is to be welcomed with tenderness. It wants room to unfold, it wants to relax and tell its story."
It's a very beautiful quote. And it's been quite meaningful to a lot of moms that have been part of
Mm,
our programs. Because if we think of feelings as almost these visitors that come
mm,
and they're trying to tell us a story. And with children, like you were saying earlier, Lisa, sometimes, we sort of put a put a lid on the story around, don't worry about it. You don't have to be feeling that. Don't be sad. Don't be and sometimes to just again the lean in of just tell me more about that.
mm,
Oh, I want to hear about that visiting feeling, that sadness or that anger or whatever that is the beginning of so much. So with feelings, learning about feelings, articulating different feelings, feelings validation, normalizing feelings, then we have these conversations around these big, strong, challenging feelings that come to visit us. And what do we do with them? And that's where we focus on emotion regulation. And the first part of that is actually to support kids and mums in understanding the trauma or stress response. Um, which is all about that. Lisa's already described the fight, flight, freeze center that keeps us from making choices that are maybe more helpful to us. They move us into this place where we don't feel safe, and it's hard to resolve conflict and to really think clearly. Um, One of the things we do with kids in order to support them in understanding this stress response or this trauma response is a little puppet show. And I just wanted to, we won't be doing the show, but just to show you a little bit of how we talk about the three parts of the brain. So we bring out the lizard and we talk about how, hey, lizard, how are you? Oh, I'm fine today. And lizard is the brain stem, the more most primitive part of our brain. So it's the part of the brain that regulates our breathing, our digestion, our heart, the blood pumping through our body. And so it has a very important function. And then there's this part of the brain that we talk about that gets activated when we feel unsafe, and that is what we call the lion brain. And the lion brain is our fight, flight, freeze. And lion sometimes doesn't make the best choices. Sometimes lion makes really good choices and setting very clear boundaries and saying, this is not safe. And I say no, and I go and I talk to someone about what just went on that made me feel unsafe. But sometimes when we're out of our window of tolerance, lion just roars or freezes or runs away. So, who's going to help calm lion down? We have our calm body, calm mind monkey. And this is the part of our brain that we can access when we recognize that, oh, I am not feeling really good right now. One of those big challenging feelings is coming in, and I'm feeling like lion brain is going to take over, but monkey brain's going to come in and do some emotion regulation strategies and support the thinking and the making choices that are going to be helpful. So, in terms of emotion regulation strategies, we do a lot of different types of strategies. And they're strategies to support. Again, there's very clearly a lot of research around the brain, mind, body connection and how bodies are impacted by trauma. So we need to practice different emotion regulation strategies that are embodied, that focus on our senses, and that also focus on our mind. So, just to share a couple of really simple ones that we do with the children, there's the 5 finger breathing, which is just very simply breathing and out, in and out, and in and out, and so on. And this really helps children to ground. There are creative visualizations that we do with children. Lying down, taking a couple of deep breaths, visualizing yourself floating on a cloud, and that also supports emotion regulation. Kids can sometimes get fidgety and a bit dysregulated with the topics that we discuss in program. So we have a lot of manipulatives. So these are things that we use with our hands. They can be soft, squishy toys that just help kids to ground. It could be putty. Putty, as we all know, is a real big draw these days, and slime. Um, but we have all sorts of putty that we suggest. We encourage kids when they're feeling, sometimes we call it wiggly jiggly. When you're feeling a bit wiggly jiggly, take out your putty, take out your ball, your ball that you have, your squishy ball, and then we have these things called mind jars. And this is one called, it's actually called the liquid motion timer. And this can be purchased on Amazon for $5 or $6. And basically, we just talk about how the colors in here can represent our different feelings, and they can get all mixed up and we can get all just all over the place with our thoughts and feelings. But if we just take a moment to relax and just watch them settle, suddenly things start to be a little different. And I can think a little more clearly, and I can handle that really strong feeling that I have right now, or I can make a choice that's going to be helpful to me, or now I can think of someone who can help me with that problem or with the fact that I don't feel safe right now. And that was all of about 40 seconds right there. Then there are storybooks and all sorts of different creative expressions that Lisa was talking about, whether it's writing, drawing, coloring out our feelings and our thoughts, music, movement, singing, dancing, just any way to sort of discharge some of that stress from their bodies. We also talk in program about this concept of take a break, and we encourage families to create a take a break space in their home. And this is each person in the home creates their own take a break area, and they can have with them there some of their emotion regulation tools that are helpful to them, and they can recognize when, I've got a really strong feeling right now, or I'm feeling dysregulated, and I'm going to go to my take a break area. They can actually announce it to the family, hey guys, I'm going to take a break, and right now I want to do it on my own. Or they can say, I need to take a break and I'm feeling really sad, and I want you, mommy, or I want you, brother or sister, to come with me. We also encourage moms to have their own take a break space because moms need to take a break as well. And it's a wonderful thing for them to be modeling for their kids.
Thanks, Paula. So, in the different ways that moms can help kids heal from the impact of violence, we've talked about feelings, we've talked about all the different ways to help kids manage stress. And the last thing we wanted to highlight for this question was just to talk a little bit about repairing the relationship with your child after you've had a hard moment. As moms, we're not always going to get it right. We're not always going to be able to respond as sensitively as we would like. We may have moments where we're not as patient or we get frustrated. We know that moms are managing a lot. You're managing the needs of your child and then a lot of other responsibilities as well. So it's important to remember that you can always repair a hard situation that you've had with your child. There are always times that you can go back and reconnect with your child after a difficult moment. And it can be through a pleasant smile or facial expression. It can be a kind word, a gentle touch, a little snuggle, and sometimes even an apology saying, Mom was really frustrated. I'm sorry I got so upset. Would it be okay if we had a hug? Could we hug it out? Moments like that really help kids learn that hard moments don't last and that we might feel disconnected one moment, but we can reconnect again. And that goes a long way to helping kids, again, um, expand their window of tolerance and feel safe and comfortable and connected in their family.
Yeah, absolutely, Lisa. Thank you. And our third theme is how can I take care of myself while I'm taking care of my children? Shanaz has a little insight into this, and this is her quote. Remember to take care of yourself. I never used to take time for myself. Somewhere inside, I believed I was being selfish. Now I realize that I'm a better mom when I have some time for myself. It helps me to be more present for my son when I'm with him.
Absolutely. So we thought we would talk about two different things to think about when taking care of yourself while you're taking care of your children. One is to look at self-care, and the other is to look at self-kindness or self-compassion. We know that when moms are feeling better, are feeling more connected, are feeling calmer, their kids benefit. Um, but we also know that self-care can feel really hard. Sometimes, if you're a really busy mom with little kids, um, it can almost feel impossible to be able to manage your children's needs and be able to get a break. I think that, generally society looks at self-care as this alone time that moms should have, where you have a long bath and time by yourself and you can read a book. And I think most moms are like, yeah, that's not really going to happen for me. And so it feels unattainable. I think what can be helpful is thinking about self-care just a little bit differently. If we think about self-care as just those things, and self-care can be those things, but if we only look at it as those things, then it does feel pretty impossible for many, many moms. But we know that self-care is really more about a mindset. It's the way that you think about your day and yourself, and making decisions in your day to take even a moment for yourself in the busyness of life. And that can literally be a moment to take a pause in the busyness of getting your kids to school, a moment to take a few deep breaths, to just center yourself before you go into a busy meeting or something that's really going to be kind of busy in your day. A moment to say a kind word to yourself. Taking those moments, if you continually build that up over time, it actually will feel quite different. Your body will feel different, your spirit will feel different. So there are lots of little ways to take care of yourself in the day-to-day life. The other thing to think about is self-care doesn't have to be alone time. You actually can take care of yourself while you take care of your kids. Um, you can think about there are lots of things that we do with our kids that can be fun if we take a moment and realize that they're fun. So, having a little snuggle with your child at the end of the day and reading a story, or going for a walk and playing in the leaves, things like that. If we look at that story time at night as a chore, then it is a chore. But if we look at that story time at night as a moment to pause, to feel connected, to put our feet off of, put our feet up and relax for a minute, and we look at it in that way, then it's self care. So, really, anything can be self care if we look at it in that sort of a way.
Hmm.
The oth- yeah, the other thing we wanted to talk a little bit about is self kindness. And that is an easy thing to say, but a hard thing to do. Um, it's thinking about the ways that you talk to yourself when something's not going your way. What are those little tapes that come on in your head? Are they helpful? The things that you say to yourself, are they hurtful? I think most people would say we are often would be much kinder to a friend. We would say kinder things to a friend who is going through the same situation than we might say to ourselves. So, taking some time to find ways to be kind to yourself, thinking about those little messages that we send ourselves and seeing if we can shift them a little bit, um, really is helpful to us. And it's also helpful to our children. When kids learn about self care and self kindness, they are able to feel calmer in their bodies. They are able to feel good about themselves and also give themselves a break when things don't go their way. In our groups, we use a lot of different self compassion quotes to help moms kind of reflect on self kindness and self compassion. And one that stands out that's just a basic one, but really kind of helps moms is treat yourself the way you would treat a good friend. What a great lesson we could teach our kids if we're always asking kids to make sure you treat your friends well. And what if at the same time we were also saying, and treat yourself well as well?
Yes, can you imagine?
Hmm.
Yes, and we're getting close to the end of our Ask CDI. So if
Hmm.
there are any outstanding questions, please do send them our way. And we just wanted to do a little summary and to also remember that you are not alone and that indeed there is help. Hurtful experiences can sometimes leave you feeling isolated and alone even after the abuse is over. But remember that there are other families who are going through similar experiences, and there are other mothers who are doing the best they can to support their children in healing from these experiences. Know that there is help. In summary, know that children and mothers are impacted by experiences of abuse, but there are many things moms can do to support their children. And it's the little things that make a difference. A lot of the little things that we spoke about today. Lean into those difficult moments with your child by supporting your child to identify their feelings. Let them know you understand, validate, and accept their feelings. Recognize that challenging behaviors can be a result of the abuse and require support in order to be understood and transformed. Recognize that children who internalize, keep their feelings in, are also hurting and need support as well. Practice emotion regulation strategies with your children to support those big, strong, challenging feelings. Know that there's always opportunity to repair in your relationship with your child, your teen. And this is good role modeling. Take care of yourself. This is also really good role modeling and centers you for those hard moments. Build family fun and family connection in ways that focus on the strengths and goodness of your family, and continue to build your family identity in ways that make you feel proud of all of your accomplishments. So we'll be posting those helplines again. And in the meantime, Lisa, maybe we can get to some of the questions. Can you have a look at the chat and see?
Yeah, so lots of very kind comments about thanking us for doing this kind of event and for this kind of a topic, and that it's been very helpful. And somebody also said that they loved the lizard puppet. It's a great puppet.
Kids, yeah, kids love that puppet as well.
Yeah, yeah, it is great. Yeah,
Let's see what else we have here. This is a great
yeah.
session, very informative. Is it being recorded? Yes, indeed, it is being recorded and it will be available through our Facebook. Um, and
Yeah, I think all of the Ask CDIs are always recorded and posted on our
yes,
Facebook, so people can reach them and watch them at any time, which is really great.
yep, absolutely. I think I should post those numbers just one more time, just put them up.
Yeah.
And maybe I kind of cut you off on the window of tolerance. Maybe I'll put the window of tolerance up for a minute as well. Um, Maybe we can just start with that. Just have to move this out of
Oh,
the way here.
we do have a quick question. So,
Okay.
do you ever facilitate these groups to other agencies? Would you consider delivery of this presentation to our early on families virtually during the day?
Well, that's certainly something we
That's,
can talk about and connect with you about.
mhm. And there are so there are some of our groups are run at other agencies. So the Here to Help program is actually run at many agencies across the across the city, and actually in different ways across the province. And that's a group for children who've been exposed to violence in their home, and they're ages 4 and up.
Hmm. And the Here to Help program in Toronto is available at CDI. It's available at Jewish Child and Jewish Family and Child Services, Native Child and Family Services, Yorktown Family Services, and La Maison. And the YWCA as well offers the Here to Help program.
And then our Mothers in Mind program, which is a group for moms who've had hurtful experiences and are parenting infants and toddlers. That's a program that we run at CDI. We also run it in partnership with the Children's Aid Society of Toronto. And it's a program that is also a CDI program that has affiliate sites. There are 8 sites in Ontario and actually a few in Australia with that program. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah.
Let me just pop up the numbers again, just for a moment. So these are fantastic resources. If you know of anyone who is currently experiencing abuse or has had abuse in the past and they're struggling, please do direct them to the Assaulted Women's Helpline. The Assaulted Women's Helpline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and in 200 languages. So you don't need to speak English in order to access their services. You can call and just speak in your own language, and they will immediately get an interpreter. The Kids Help Phone is also available 24/7. And mental health TO is available when navigating mental health services. That's a really good place to start. And just explain what you're looking for or what your friend might be looking for, and they will help you navigate. And of course, you can connect with us at CDI. Please do have a look at the website if you wanted more information on our family violence services and other services that we provide as an agency. Well, I guess we're somewhat done. Thank you very much for attending Ask CDI today. And again, please know if you have had experiences of violence that you are not alone, that there is help. And thank you, Lisa, for
Thank you, Paula.
for partnering on this presentation.
Yes, thank you. You as well.
Good night. Take care.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.